Hi, I'm Larry Menti. Welcome to Jersey Matters. Congress just took a monumental vote on whether to allow Syrian refugees into the country and how they should be vetted. And we are honored to be joined by Congressman Donald Payne, Jr., who is on the Homeland Security Committee. He represents New Jersey District 10, which is Essex, Union, and Hudson counties in North Jersey. Congressman, sir, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's get a reaction to the vote first.
Well, I was very disappointed in the direction that the Congress took in terms of the Syrian refugee plight. This has been a nation that has been built on allowing political asylum and immigrants that are looking for a better way of life in this country. And that's what it was built on. And so the vote yesterday was very disturbing. To take a pause has been the term that's been used. Well, if you look at the process, it's not like someone gets in here in 3 weeks. It's a 18 to 24 month process. And there are 14 checkoffs that you have to pass before you're allowed in. And so anywhere along the way, if it's the 3rd or the 5th or the 13th, you don't get to come in. So we're turning away children, grandparents, and mothers that are looking for a better way of life for their families.
Now, the Republicans would argue back that the orphans and the widows that President Obama spoke of and the children you speak of is not a large percentage of those that were coming over. I've heard numbers as low as 2%. Can that be correct?
Well, if you just look at the news reports from Greece and see who's getting off these boats and who are lining these highways in Hungary on their way to Germany, it looks like quite a bit more than 2%.
Now, a lot of this started, the talk about the vetting process, started with Congressman Peter King, who came out on several national newscasts and said that he was briefed, and as member of Homeland Security, he was briefed, and that there was no vetting process. He didn't trust the vetting process at all. There's no way to vet all of these Syrian refugees. Were you at that same briefing?
I was not. And I don't know, Mr. King is a great colleague, and we have worked together on many pieces of legislation. He's supported me and I've supported him, but I don't see where he does not know about the process. It's clear. It's a 14-step process and takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months to pass it.
What he said specifically was it was impossible to vet all of these Syrian refugees properly to ensure that ISIS couldn't sneak a terrorist over here. Two parts of that question. I want you to respond to him saying that, and you kind of already did. But do you share that same concern?
No, because I think the process that is in place will verify anyone that they have an issue with. So I don't see where an 18 to 24 month process is not enough vetting.
You understand why some Americans feel that way, and the polls have showed a majority of Americans feel that way. There's some concern. They've seen what's happening in Paris. They saw a jetliner come down, and we'll talk about your aviation security bill in a second, by the way. Congratulations on that. And what's happening in Mali as well, and they see all that happening, and they hear ISIS saying, we do want to sneak in ISIS terrorists with these refugees. So they hear all of that going on, and understandably, they're concerned. And many times they don't trust the government. So when the government says we're going to vet, they have no trust. Right. Is there a point where you have to listen to the American people? Is there a point where you have to say they have a legitimate concern and we have to act on that?
Well, obviously, the Congress did yesterday.
But you don't feel that way?
No, I thought that there was a process in place that would have allowed us to bring mothers, grandparents, young children into this country. There are bodies washing up on the beaches of Greece, that people are in boats that are supposed to hold 40 people, that 80 people are in.
I understand, and it's horrible, and you're right. And what the Republicans would argue is let's try to make it safer over there for them so they can stay in their homeland rather than bring them here. That's one argument you hear. The other argument you hear is there's horrible things happening all around the world. Right. We can't save everybody. We can't bring everybody here. Why us?
Well, I mean, then we need to step away from what this country has stood for, its entire existence. Give us your tired.
Well, that's immigration. This is refugees. This is us accepting refugees.
Well, I mean, we have opened our borders to many refugees that are looking for political asylum. That once again is part of our history. So to back away from it now, for the life of me, I can't understand.
I want to move on, since you're on Homeland Security, and talk about the attacks in Paris and the attacks in Mali. And it seems there's been that ISIS has stepped things up with the taking down of a Russian plane and the attacks in Beirut. And there's many other attacks that weren't on Western countries that we don't get the media attention, but there's been a lot of attacks. And now these threats against Washington, D.C., the White House specifically, and on New York. Do you have, you're in Homeland Security, do you have any evidence that there's something close or there's been any chatter?
From what we understand, there are no credible threats against either city to this point that has been brought to light. I'm sure you know after Paris and now Mali that the efforts are going to intensify twofold in terms of making sure that the homeland is safe. And that's our first obligation, to make sure that the American people are safe. And I understand their trepidation and concern about what they see happening across the world, and then having ISIS say, we're bringing it to you too. You know, unfortunately, these issues have happened in Paris and in Mali. But I believe that here in the United States, we have a more robust plan in place to secure the homeland. So I think that we're glad that they have mentioned those two towns. And so that will just heighten our awareness in terms of anything that's going on.
The threat itself is a form of terrorism, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what's going on. You know, even in my capacity on Homeland Security, you know, these situations happen, and I get concerned, but I don't get the fear that they're trying to put in the minds of the American people. But after, you know, the subsequent Paris and then Mali, even I had to stop for a minute and kind of gather myself, so I can imagine what the American people are feeling. But you know, rest assured that the president and everyone in the government is working to make sure the homeland is safe.
This vote in the House, before we go to the next segment, I wanted to go back to that for just 1 second, because you brought up the president. Many people are saying that this was a blow, a huge loss for the president, this vote in Congress. Do you see it that way? The fact that 47 Democrats voted with the Republicans?
Well, you know, it's as you stated, you have to listen to the American people, and I believe that those Democrats in those districts heard from their constituents, and that was the feeling that they had or they received, and so they voted for their constituents' concern. In my district, I received maybe 12 calls yesterday, and they all were telling me to vote no. And I received 3 calls that said to vote yes, and none of them lived in the 10th Congressional District.
Oh, that's interesting. So you were representing your constituents.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
You take it as people voting with their constituency, not necessarily a rebuke of the president.
Absolutely, and they were probably, you know, disappointed they couldn't vote with the president. But, you know, you are a United States representative, and you represent your constituents.
When we come back, as I promised, I want to talk about the aviation security bill. I read a story that says the Payne aviation security bill. So congratulations on that. I want to talk about exactly what it does and the fact that this Russian airliner went down and how it might play into making our airlines more secure. When we continue our conversation with Congressman Donald Payne, Jr. of New Jersey's 10th Congressional District. Jersey Matters continues in just a moment.